My mom always said she was working late. And growing up, I never questioned it, because she was the type of woman who carried the world on her shoulders and somehow still had room for me, the type of mother who would return home with swollen feet, tired eyes, and a smile she forced just so I wouldn't worry, the type of woman who believed protecting me meant hiding parts of herself that were too painful to explain, and for years, I accepted that story, until the small signs started appearing. Signs I ignored at first because children never want to believe that something might be wrong with the person who holds their whole world together. Signs like the way she flinched whenever someone knocked on the door after dark, the way she double-checked the locks every night not once but 3 times, sometimes 4, the way she'd sit on the couch after she thought I was asleep, pressing her hand to her chest and breathing slowly like she was trying to hold herself together, the way she sometimes came home with faint bruises on her arms or scratches she dismissed as work accidents, even though paperwork never leaves marks like that, and the way she always looked more exhausted than any normal job could explain, as if she was carrying not just her own pain but someone else's too, and it wasn't until one cold night when she came home nearly at midnight, with dust on her clothes, dried sweat in her hair and trembling hands, that something inside me snapped awake, because she looked less like a woman returning from work and more like someone returning from a battlefield, and when she saw the concern on my face, she forced a smile so broken I felt my chest tighten, said it was just a long day, and kissed my forehead before heading to her room. But that night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every small moment I had ignored for years, every bruise, every lie, every forced smile, and for the first time, I realized that maybe my mother wasn't tired from work. Maybe she was tired from something she never wanted me to see. So the next evening, when she grabbed her keys and whispered that she would be late again, I waited 2 minutes after the door closed, put on my jacket, and followed her quietly into the night, my heart pounding so loudly I felt it in my throat, and I kept my distance as she walked. Not toward the bus stop she always claimed to use, not toward the downtown office she said she worked in, but in the opposite direction entirely, toward the industrial outskirts of town where abandoned warehouses stood like silent skeletons, rusted fences creaked in the wind, and the streetlights flickered like dying stars, and it was in that unsettling atmosphere, surrounded by shadows and silence, that I watched my mother check over her shoulder before slipping into a rundown warehouse through a small side door, and even though fear screamed at me to turn back, curiosity and worry pushed me to follow, and when I peeked inside through a crack in the metal door, the sight before me froze my breath. There were women, 3 of them, along with 2 small children, huddled together on old blankets in the dim light of 2 construction lamps, their faces pale with fear, their clothes torn, their bags packed hastily as if they'd left home in a rush, and right in the middle of them stood my mother, her voice soft, steady, and full of a compassion I had never witnessed so intensely, gently wrapping a coat around a trembling woman, washing blood from another's arm with a cloth dipped in warm water, whispering words of comfort to a small girl whose face was streaked with tears, saying, "You're safe now." Again and again like a prayer, and it hit me that she wasn't working late. She was saving people, helping women escape violent, abusive homes in the dead of night, acting as their guardian when the world had turned its back on them. And the realization sent waves of shock through me, because my mother, my quiet, gentle mother, was living a second life I knew nothing about, a life filled with danger and courage far beyond anything I'd ever imagined. And as I stepped inside without meaning to, my foot brushing against a loose piece of metal, the sound echoed like a gunshot, and my mother spun around, fear exploding on her face when she saw me standing there, whispering in a shaky voice, "Emily, what are you doing here?" And in her expression I saw not anger but terror, the kind of terror that comes from realizing your child has stepped into the very danger you've spent years trying to protect them from. And I whispered, "Mom, what is this? What are you doing?" And for a long moment she said nothing, just stood there breathing unevenly, her hands trembling as if the truth itself was too heavy to lift, until she finally took a slow breath and told me everything, told me how years ago she had escaped my father, a man I barely remembered but who had been violent, unpredictable, dangerous, told me how she had lived in fear, how she had run with me in her arms when I was just 3 years old, how she found shelter through a secret network of women who helped survivors vanish from their abusers, and how she made a promise to herself back then that if she ever became strong enough, healed enough, brave enough. She would help others escape too, and she had been keeping that promise for years in silence, taking late-night phone calls, meeting women in hidden locations, guiding them through the process of disappearing from danger, all while protecting me from the truth, so I would never be targeted by the violent men these women were running from. And as she spoke, tears streamed down her face, the years of pain she had buried surfacing all at once, and before I could respond, one of the women in the warehouse stepped forward, a woman with a fresh bruise on her cheek and eyes filled with fragile hope, and whispered, "Your mother saved my life. She saved my son's life. You should be proud." And her words shattered something inside me, releasing a flood of emotion I didn't even know I was holding, because suddenly I understood every late night, every lie, every bruise, every moment of fear I had seen in my mother's eyes, all of it connected, all of it part of a mission she had taken on silently, selflessly, bravely, and without recognition, and I threw my arms around her, holding her tightly as she broke down in a way I had never seen before, her body shaking with years of suppressed pain and fear, and I whispered, "You're not alone anymore, Mom. I'm here. I'm not letting you do this alone." And from that night forward, everything changed. I began helping her in ways that didn't put me in danger, packing clothes, preparing food bags, collecting donations, organizing small supplies, comforting children whose lives had been shattered by violence, becoming part of the quiet network of women who saved one another while the world remained unaware. Learning just how many people my mother had saved over the years, how many lives she had touched, how many nights she had spent risking her safety because she refused to let anyone experience the horror she once endured, and in those moments, watching her work tirelessly, holding a crying child or calming a terrified woman escaping in the middle of the night, I realized that my mother wasn't just hardworking or strong. She was a warrior, a protector, a guardian angel for people who had lost everything, and for the first time, I saw her not just as my mother but as the hero she truly was, a woman who had risen from her own pain and turned it into a mission to save others, and I understood that the nights she came home exhausted weren't signs of weakness. They were marks of her incredible strength, battle scars from a war she fought in silence. And every time I think back to that night when I followed her into the shadows, I realize that I didn't just uncover a secret life. I uncovered the truth of who she really was, a brave woman who had sacrificed her own peace to give others a chance at freedom, a woman who transformed her trauma into courage, a woman who wasn't working late. She was saving lives, changing futures, and proving that real heroes don't need capes, applause, or recognition. They just need a heart strong enough to fight for someone else in the dark. And that night I discovered that my mother had been fighting for others long before I ever knew, and she will always be the bravest woman I have ever known.